In September 2019, the Prime Minister warned against fueling needless anxiety among Australian children about the danger of climate change. He said, and I think it's important that we give them confidence that they will not only have a wonderful country and a pristine environment to live in, but they will also have an economy that they can live in as well. He said, Deputy Speaker, the worst thing I would impose on any child is needless anxiety. On any Australian child. And yet, Australian children were then rescued by the Navy off the beaches of Malakuta in black summer in some of the worst bushfires that drove them out of their own town. And Australian children were hospitalised in record numbers because of asthma and respiratory illness and heat stroke as a result of those environmental conditions from that same black summer. It is Australian children who have had to sue their own government to prove that they are owed a duty of care. They sued the Morrison government and they won. In May, the federal court found a new duty, a duty it has never found before, that the Environment Minister owes a duty of care to Australian young people, not to cause them physical harm in the form of personal injury from climate change. And the court warned in its written judgment that it is difficult to characterise in a single phrase the devastation that the plausible evidence presented in this proceeding forecasts for the children. The physical environment will be harsher, far more extreme and devastatingly brutal when angry. And as for the human experience, the quality of life, the opportunity to partake in nature's treasures, the capacity to grow and to prosper, all will be greatly diminished. Lives will be cut short, trauma will be far more common, and good health harder to hold and to maintain. And none of this will be the fault of nature itself. It will largely be inflicted by the inaction of this generation of adults in what might fairly be described as the greatest intergenerational injustice ever inflicted by one generation of humans upon the next. To say that children are vulnerable are to vastly understate their predicament. Deputy Speaker, clearly there are worse things that a PM can impose than needless anxiety. Because after all of that, and after today's IPCC report, the Prime Minister has chosen to dig in. The Prime Minister who always talks about the cost of others, but never talks about the cost of his own inaction, of his own failure to act on climate change, not just domestically in dealing with extreme weather events, but also the cost of tariffs that other countries are now considering imposing upon us. Deputy Speaker, our constituents are crying out for this parliament to act. Constituents like John and Chris and Clive have already written to me today about the IPCC report urging us to act. My high school geography teacher, Mr. Fitz, who is now sadly passed away, used to teach me to think globally but act locally. We want to back technologies like offshore wind, like hydrogen, green steel and others, not only to get the energy that we need to keep the lights on, but to create a jobs boom in new industries, in local supply chains and export. In Lilley, we have a proud local manufacturing history that we could reinvigorate with Labor's policies like rewiring the nation and power to the people. Deputy Speaker, the cost of climate change will come to every Australian neighbourhood if it hasn't already. And Deputy Speaker, I said in my first speech that many big debates are not right versus left. They are short-term versus long-term. And we cannot prioritise one at the expense of the other, even at a time when the news cycle or the electorate cycle or the bills coming in all draw us to short-termism. It must never be beyond us in this place to get the long-term right too. But for 8 long years, it has been beyond this place to get the long-term right. Under the Morrison government, it seems well beyond us. And Prime Minister, that is on your watch. That is your complacency. That is your failure to pull the levers of power because of your party room. And perhaps the scariest thing of all, your delusion that you are doing an adequate job now. You are the cause of our anxiety.
Order. I call